I'm Jen. I'm 59, almost, and 5 years away from retirement. And so I, of course, have a bucket list. You know, a list of things that I want to do or accomplish before I die, before I kick the bucket. My list is amorphous. It's not written down. And if you plopped a horse in front of me today and asked me if I wanted to go for a ride, I would very eagerly say yes, and then add it then and there as a box checked on my bucket list. Most people have bucket lists. Some are written, and some, like me, are a bottomless chasm of well-defined intentions, dusty relics from childhood. I mean, I wouldn't say no to a picture with Sean Cassidy and maybe a little on the cheek. I have a gaggle of drunken vows made with friends at university and a few very incredulous, I'm so gonna do that, from scrolling far too much on the internet. But did you know that I have an anti-bucket list too? A list of things that I simply will not do. Not if you dropped it at my feet, not if you gifted it to me, all expenses paid. Wouldn't do it. No amount of cajoling, peer pressure, encouragement, or reassurance would get me to do these things on my anti-bucket list. So here's a rundown of things that are just not going to happen in my lifetime. Number 1 is bungee jumping. Skydiving, parachuting, tandem, single, I'm not going to do it. No cliff jumping either. Basically, if it involves me voluntarily jumping from somewhere very high up and then free falling, no wingsuits either, those are out, then I'm not going to do it. Now, I'm not overly scared of heights, and I had to jump off a 10-meter diving platform as part of an initiation rite for a water polo team. I did that. I didn't like it. I'm just completely uninterested in jumping from on high. I mean, if there was a fire in a building and I had to jump, I would do it. But I won't do it for a sport or a thrill or a dare or a bucket list. Reading War and Peace or Finnegan's Wake or Infinite Jest, basically any swamp of a book that looks good sitting on a bookshelf and gains you kudos and intelligence points at dinner parties if you say that you've read it. I attempted to read Anna Karenina, all 1,100 or so pages of her, back in my 20s. I do have a degree in English, and I was more interested in the English Renaissance and poetry, so I never took any courses on the Russians. And believing that I couldn't be the well-rounded literary figure of my time without reading the Russians, I attempted Anna Karenina. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler here. Hopefully it's not too big of a spoiler because there are several movies of Anna Karenina out there. But she dies. It's more interesting in the movies. In the novel, she dies about 2/3 of the way through. And the rest of the novel is, well, I was so angry at Tolstoy for killing her off with so much of the book left that I stopped reading. Like, seriously, I was 2 pages past her death before I realized, and I kind of went to myself, wait a minute, what? And I had to flip back 2 pages, and yeah, he killed her off in 1 sentence. 1 sentence. And then he's off again like it's no big deal, just carrying on with more farms and I don't know what, just Russian angst. So I went looking for my copy of Anna Karenina. I was going to show it to you, and I can't find it. I think that I was so angry that I sold it. I turned it into a used bookstore and got money for it or got a new book. But I have a copy of Crime and Punishment. It's going to remain unread in my bookshelves. Moby Dick's in there too. I'm not going to read it. Sound and the Fury? I own it. Not going to read it. It's not long books with complex themes and storylines that I'm going to be avoiding. I've read The Lord of the Rings. I've read all of George R.R. Martin's Song of Ice and Fire series. I've read all of Patrick O'Brien's 17, 18 novels on Jack Aubrey and Stephen Maturin's adventures in the Napoleonic Wars. I've read all of those. That's not the thing. It's the ridiculous, literary, highbrow, you know the ones I'm talking about. Those ones. I'm not going to read them. Number 3 is eating fugu. That's Japanese. In English, it's called pufferfish. Pufferfish, or fugu, possesses a deadly toxin, a potentially deadly toxin, called tetrodotoxin. There's no known antidote. And the fish itself requires meticulous preparation by a chef that has been trained for 3 or more years to eliminate the poisonous components and prevent the fish meat from being contaminated. Between 1996 and 2006, there were 44 documented cases of fugu poisoning in Japan. James Bond nearly dies at the end of From Russia with Love after he's kicked with a boot with a hidden blade that has been dipped in fugu poison. Legend also has it that the warlord, or the shogun, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, back in the 16th century, outlawed fugu after too many of his samurai were dying from poorly prepared meals. Now, I lived in Japan and taught English in the early 1990s, and I was never offered fugu as a dish, and I would have turned it down even then, even in my wilder, more immortal seeming 20s. That's too much risk for me now, too much risk for me then. It's a very easy nope from me. Number 4 is riding a motorcycle. I have never wanted to ride a motorcycle, even as a passenger, even with an experienced rider. Never. I mean, they're very cool looking and they have a very cool rep, and I enjoy watching motorcycle movies, all the cool ones. But for me, it just seems they're too fast and too dangerous. There's no appeal for me at all. Now, I have less apprehension about scooters and mopeds for some reason. And I know they're quite similar, the same family, right? Those aren't meant to be driven fast. They're little commuters, in my mind. I've never ridden a scooter or a moped either, but the allure of renting a moped and touring the back roads of Tuscany kind of still lingers in the back of my mind. But no motorcycles ever. Number 5 is going to the New Year's Eve bash in New York's Times Square. Now, I have been to New York and I love New York. I will go back. I've been to Times Square. It's sort of a meh, but I've never been to Times Square for New Year's Eve. But I have lived in Japan, and on our days off, we would head into Tokyo. And quite honestly, Shibuya Crossing, I find, is far bigger and more spectacular and more lit than Times Square in New York. That plus the fact that celebrating New Year's Eve has never been a thing for me. I mean, I go to bed early, around 8 o'clock. I mean, staying up until midnight just to toot a horn, have a glass of champagne, and yell a little bit, just not a good use of my sleeping time. I'm never going to do Times Square on New Year's Eve, and I won't miss it. I climbed Mount Fuji when I was 29. I went with another English teacher from the same school that I was teaching at, and we started from the 5th stage, I think, at around 10 o'clock at night because we wanted to summit and see the sunrise from the top. It took us about 6 hours of trudging up an endless series of switchbacks, very narrow switchbacks on a path like a lunar looking path with headlamps. It was all just gray gravel. And at the end, near the top, I could only make one half of one of the switchback loops before I had to stop and catch my breath. The altitude was really getting to me. Great view, great sunrise. We made it in the dark. But it was tough going. A lot easier going down, or maybe not easier going down, but a lot quicker. You didn't take the same path down that you took up. It was a different one. And it wasn't so much a path as at the time that I was doing this was in the 90s, you just kind of jumped and slid on the gravel to get down. Sort of jump and slide all the way down. And that was a lot quicker, maybe 2.5 hours. And needless to say, my knees were the size of cantaloupes for 3 days afterwards. My old college roommate from Teachers College, she and her husband attempted to climb Mount Kilimanjaro as a bucket list item, but of course, in their 40s. My roommate, she didn't make it. She had to turn back, but her husband did. He got up there. And she said they were both completely wasted when they got back to the base camp. It was the toughest thing she's ever done, or him. And I was 51 when I went to Peru. And I took the train up to Machu Picchu. I decided not to do the trek and the climb like everybody else in my tour group. I took the train. It was a good decision for me. Mainly because I was 51 at the time and I remembered Mount Fuji. I remembered Kathy's try to get up Mount Kilimanjaro. And I recently met up with another woman who was on the same Peru trip with me, the same tour group. And she said, she was one of the ones who did the trek and climb. She said that she didn't think she was going to make it. And she remembers me and another woman who got sick. So the two of us, we took the train and met the rest of our group up at Machu Picchu. And Val was saying that she remembers us while she was trekking and just thinking, I should have done the train. I could have done the train. And so that really made me think, yeah, you were right not to do the trek and the climb. And I would so love to do an Everest base camp trek. But I mean, there are tour groups that do that and you can climb to Everest base camp. I just don't think that, I believe I have missed my window on the trekking climbing thing. That would have been good to do when I was in my 20s and 30s. Not maybe my 40s, but I doubt it. Definitely not my 50s. And not at the age of, I turned 59 in a month. I have missed that window and I will not be doing any more big trekking climbing adventures. Not on my list, not on my bucket list. It's on my anti-bucket list. Number 7 is run a marathon. Look at me. I will never run a marathon. Not on my bucket list. Totally on my anti-bucket list. Not gonna happen. Number 8 is visit Las Vegas. I've never been to Vegas. I don't live that far away. It's a short plane flight, maybe 3-4 hours flight from Vancouver Island to Las Vegas. Never been. I love all of the Vegas movies. I love Viva Las Vegas with Elvis. I love all of the Ocean's 11, 12, 13 movies. I love the old one with Frank Sinatra and the Rat Pack. I love Casino. I love the whole vibe of the movies and everything. But the thing is that I'm not a big gambler. And once again, I go to bed early. I just don't see the allure of Las Vegas for me. I don't feel drawn to it at all. Number 9 is getting a tattoo. I don't have any tattoos. 59 years old in a month, and I don't have a tattoo. I've never even wanted to get a tattoo. And I know this is polarizing because people who have tattoos love their tattoos. I mean, I don't know anyone with one tattoo other than my brother. He has one. But anyone generally outside of my brother, generally people who have one tattoo, they continue to get tattoos because they love them. They're addicting, I guess. But I have no wish to get a tattoo, and it's got nothing to do with needles. I'm fine with needles. I'm okay with, I understand there will be a little pain or maybe a lot of pain, but if I really wanted it, I would do it. I'm not scared of needles. I'm not scared of cleanliness or anything. I know that the tattoo shops now, legitimate ones, are very clean and sanitary, and that's not a problem for me. I worry that I won't like it. I worry that it's permanent. And I really don't, I really don't think that if I have something to celebrate or remember, that a tattoo is the best option for me. I think I would rather celebrate with a dinner out or go on a trip, or buy a piece of jewelry perhaps, instead of inking myself. Now, I'm sure if I think hard enough that I will come up with more items for my anti-bucket list. It too is an amorphous list. It's always shifting, for me at least. But what about you? Do you have items on your anti-bucket list, or do you disagree with some of the items on mine? If you have time, give me a like, a share, and please subscribe. It helps me out a lot with the channel. Bye-bye.